Welcome to the Super Boomerang tutorial where you're gonna learn how to throw a 30-foot card boomerang and have it return to your fingertips, all with a simple airbending technique. The story of this tutorial goes something like this. One night before I went to bed, I posted a clip of me performing Super Boomerang and woke up to find that it had trended online. The video then found itself on this news show, then Disney's new TV show, and while all of that was pretty awesome, the comments weren't so generous because most people said it was fake. People were saying that it had to be strings, magnets, or maybe even some sort of drone. I don't really blame them because they made a really good point. In the video that I posted, right as I catch the card, my body twists to the side, which would have allowed me to switch out the trick card for a normal card. And if you actually know how people make cards fly, that is actually how many of them do it. Super Boomerang, on the other hand, doesn't use any of those things. And to prove it, I'm going to show you exactly how it works. Within the next few minutes, not only will you know how this works, you're going to be able to start doing it as well. I learned one of the biggest secrets about Super Boomerang in this old book on how to use cards as weapons. 100% serious, but more on that in a bit. For now, if you're ready to learn Super Boomerang, go grab a card. If you don't have a card, don't worry, you can use something bigger like a postcard or something. Just don't use something plastic and heavy like a credit card or driver's license because that's not gonna work. Now let's answer the big question. How does Super Boomerang really work? And while it might look like a boomerang, it actually works more like a frisbee. You see, frisbees fly because they're shaped like airplane wings. They have a curved top and a flatter bottom, and this causes air to flow faster over the top and slower over the bottom. The slower air underneath creates greater air pressure, and it gently pushes the frisbee upwards, creating something we call lift. And so, the frisbee flies. Spinning the frisbee rapidly creates a gyroscopic effect, and that allows it to float with stability like it's floating on some kind of invisible train track. And basically, more spin equals a further and more stable flight. Now this then means if you take this frisbee, you angle it up, you throw it at just the right angle, it goes up that invisible train track. It floats all the way back down into your hands, just like a boomerang. So that's how Super Boomerang works. The problem, a playing card isn't shaped like a frisbee, and if you've ever tried throwing one, you'll know that it doesn't float like a frisbee either. That brings us to the secret airbending technique that I promised. The first airbending technique is called catching the air, and all that means is that you're taking a playing card and you're making it a bit more frisbee-like. It's what gives Super Boomerang that float that normal card boomerangs you see don't have. And to do that, simply take a playing card and bow it down like that. Give it a gentle squeeze lengthwise, and look, it gives it a slight curve, and congratulations, you have turned your playing card into a mini frisbee. You're now ready for airbending technique number 2. Riding the air. And this step is about creating enough gyroscopic force in your playing card as you spin it, because remember, more spin equals a further and more stable boomerang. Remember that old book about cards as weapons? Well, that book was written by an incredible card handler called Ricky J. And Ricky was a boss. He had figured out a way to throw cards at such high speeds that they could cut into watermelons, slice bananas in half, and of course, Ricky could boomerang. You see, unlike how most people clip cards between their fingers to throw them, Ricky had figured out a special grip that allowed him to boost that spin with his finger. And I remember scouring the web back then trying to find a copy of the book, but all I could find back then was this old photograph that someone posted featuring something called the J grip. And so I played around with that grip, and one day, after endlessly throwing cards into the air and picking them up from the ground, the cards started flying back into my hands. Crazier yet, I started to throw further and longer boomerangs than I even thought were possible. You see, in my trial and error, I modified the J grip in a way that gave me incredible control over the spin of the card. You see, the J grip evolved from something called the Herman grip, something people still use today for smaller boomerangs. Ricky J then modified the Herman grip by shifting the card out, allowing for a more relaxed and open grip. My modification, which we call the V clip, simply rotates the card 90 degrees from there, adding yet another layer of ease and control when doing a boomerang. To get a feel for this, hold the card with the long side facing you, clipped between your thumb and your middle finger near the bottom corner. Okay, not the top, but near the bottom. Then toss it by curling and extending your wrist and letting go of the card entirely. And it's going to look something like this. Not much spin. Now you're going to boost the spin with the V clip. Step 1, hold the card in the exact same way, but this time add your index finger to the top corner right here. Step 2, curl your wrist in all the way. Step 3, extend and arch your wrist completely the other way. Now at the peak, which is right here, you want to let go of just your thumb and middle finger like that, while leaving your index finger on the corner. As you let go, and this is step 5, and the corner of the card pivots around your finger, whip your index finger back in, like you're closing your hand quickly. If you do it all together, it looks like this. See the difference? Way more spin. Now that you know how to do V-clip, you're ready for the most important secret of this entire tutorial, and it's called hovering. What that is that you're spinning the card in a way that it just goes vertically down to the ground and lands somewhere around your feet. And this is how it looks. Hold in V-clip, spin it down to the ground, have it land at your feet. And if you want to create maximum spin, beyond just using your index finger, you want to draw your arm a little bit as well, so it looks a bit like this. And that's it, hovering. Now spend the next 5 minutes or so sitting down or standing up to get the hang of hovering, and your boomerang is going to be way easier to do, because it means you'll now have precise control over where the card goes when you spin it. So if you're ready, let's get into how to actually throw a boomerang. Now this is actually the simplest part, and the secret is all about the aim. Hold the card in V-clip and arch your wrist gently like this. This is so you end up releasing the card at the same angle at which you aim it, which is right here. If you aim with your wrist straight, like that, you end up releasing the card like this in a tilted way, and basically your boomerang will keep veering to the side and you'll have no idea why. Also, you want to keep the card as horizontal as possible, as it helps to keep your aim consistent. So not like this or like this, but just like that. Then position the card around chest height with your elbows slightly bent, and angle your arm a little less than diagonal. So if this is diagonal, this is less than diagonal, and this helps because a gentler angle gives the card more hang time than a steeper angle like this. Finally, focus on the spot you want the card to reach. It could be the corner of a ceiling or the lens of a camera. Then throw the card in that direction while giving it a massive spin back. Remember to completely curve your wrist in, fully extend it out, and whip your index finger back in for the throw, because it makes all the difference. If you get this right, the card will launch out there and start to boomerang back into your hands. Of course, if you want to do a huge 30-foot super boomerang, there's one more thing you need to know, and that is you need to power it with your forearm. To do that, bring your forearm all the way in and curl your wrist. Then you want to flow outwards, starting with your forearm, then arching your wrist all the way, then whipping back with your index finger and drawing back with your arm. The idea is to do this as a single flowing motion, in like that, out like that, and whipping back in, kind of like you're whipping a towel. And when you do that, you give the card both massive power outwards and a spin backwards, giving you a super boomerang. Catching the card, therefore, is now just a matter of opening your hand palm up and receiving the card with your thumb and your fingers. And if you're catching a huge super boomerang, you want to cushion the impact of the card like that, so that it doesn't bounce off your hand when it returns. If you've been following all these steps so far, I wouldn't be surprised if you've already nailed your first boomerang. And here are 3 quick tips that make all the difference. Number 1, don't start with throwing huge 30-foot super boomerangs. Start with simple 3-foot ones and get higher as you get more consistent. Number 2, the wind is not your friend. Avoid windy places or a huge fan or the AC in the way, because it's not gonna work. Number 3, don't chase after your boomerang. Try to practice standing exactly where you are and have the card return to your hands instead of going like, oh, I got the card. I just think it looks so much better. To recap this whole tutorial, Super Boomerang works with 2 airbending techniques, catching the air and riding the air. You catch the air by giving the card a gentle squeeze lengthwise, so it's more like a frisbee. Then you ride the air by holding it in V-clip and hovering it to the ground. Now to actually throw the boomerang, hold it around chest height and extend your arm out with your elbow slightly bent, and make sure you have a slightly arched wrist, then hold the card a little less than diagonal. Power it with your forearm like this and whip back with your index finger and arm, and that's it. You're now ready to go crazy with a deck of cards and do Super Boomerang. And if you don't have a nice deck of cards, hop on over to thevirts.com. This also brings us to why we wanted to do a boomerang tutorial in particular. You see, boomerangs are kind of funny, right? They don't always come back, kind of like life. But when they do, it's one of the most satisfying things in the world. You can put yourself out there like a boomerang and one of a few things could happen. First, the boomerang could just never return and you get complete silence. Or the boomerang returns and it hits you in the face, which is not cool. Or the boomerang returns to your fingertips and you experience total satisfaction. For us, almost 10 years ago, we put ourselves out there with the Virtuoso deck, the first deck designed for cardistry. And back then, the community was so small that so many people said that our passion project would fail. Thankfully, with the help of our community, our little boomerang came back, and then cardistry started growing all across the globe. Now, almost 10 years later, we've worked on this deck of cards, the Virtuoso P1, a new kind of cardistry deck that's the first of its kind all over again. And this time, as we put this little boomerang out there once more, we hope that it returns yet again. So if you enjoyed learning this tutorial and you're interested in cardistry, head on over to thevirts.com where you can check out more of our cards and our tutorials. And if this is not your thing, no hard feelings. But I hope that your boomerang never returns, like ever. That's all I have for you today. My name is Hiram from The Virts, and I hope you enjoyed Super Boomerang and learning some airbending techniques. I'll see you soon.